VenomousStare, back to talk some NFL. I'm really going to lay into the teams that have been disappointing because it's 8 weeks in and we've had enough sample size and enough time to establish who looks like a fraud. And a lot of the teams that have pretty good records are even bigger frauds than the teams that have been making fools of themselves since week one, like the Rams. So let's jump right in. Now, in a team that I can't bash, the Bills are probably the best team in the AFC. It's either them or the Chiefs. They have a spectacular offensive assault. They have one of the best quarterbacks in the league. Diggs is a top-tier receiver. Singletary's underrated as a swing back that catches passes. Obviously, Allen's god-tier, top 5, and can run remarkably well. The defense is very solid as well. And picked up some big names to supplement that defense in the offseason. I'm a big fan of the Bills. They're my favorite to win the AFC. If all goes according to plan, we'll see Bills, Chiefs in the AFC title game, and it'll be a shootout, okay? I'm so tired of tuning into these games that are supposed to shoot out, and it's 7-10 at halftime. And you watch the games, and it's just one unforced offensive error after another. You know, I feel like the amount of razor sharp offenses that are consistent and fun to watch this year compared to 2006, 2007 when Manning and Brady were at the peak of their powers, I feel like it's way lower. And that's crazy to say because we're playing in an offensive metagame where they've essentially nerfed defense out of the game. And you watch these offenses now, and even with every advantage spoon-fed to them, they still fuck up. So there's just been a very low quality of games throughout this entire season. And you expect the bad games, the bad games, quote unquote, to be bad. Like if the Jets are playing the Browns, you don't expect to get your doors blown off. But whenever you have these matchups like the Rams Niners, or the Rams and the Chiefs, or the Bills and the Chiefs, and it's just boring and shitty the whole way through. That's sort of what I've thought about this entire NFL season, is it's really fucking boring. And I think we're really getting to that point where we've hit diminishing returns. If you've nerfed the defense too many times, there's too many fucking ads on everything. Even if you watch Red Zone, the ads are still so in your face and pervasive, it'll make your stomach turn. So just a real shit job from the NFL over the last few years. And the normies keep tuning in, but I'm to the point where after about a couple hours, I'm done. It doesn't matter how good the slate of games looks, they will be disappointing. It's a lot like college football in that way. Oh, 1 and 2 are playing, and it's just a fucking sewer game. Like one team can't even get their dick out. That's what's so vexing to me. Look at the Bucks. They don't show up. They got embarrassed by Carolina, a hapless Carolina team in stunning freefall who just lost their head coach. The Bucks couldn't queef out a touchdown against him. Are you kidding me? Look at the Rams. The Rams have been a joke team all fucking year. They can't get their backfield figured out. They look like they're missing OB joke. Stafford looks washed. The defense is underwhelming. This is a team that fucking won the Super Bowl last year. This is a team that should have 2 losses at most, that not only have they not looked good, they haven't even been fucking watchable. Let's talk about the Cardinals. There's another team who you say to yourself, well, this might not be a team that is necessarily perfect, but at least they're going to look great on offense. And even if you're just watching from a fantasy perspective, you want to see those points, that's how the NFL has legislated the rules of the game. They want to show these people, these offensive stars, having big games. What they don't want is the old jacked up segment from the mid-2000s before Monday Night Football where they would show the biggest hits of the game. That is the most exciting thing about football. These big punishing hits that the defenders make. You literally can't do that anymore. They've purposely legislated that out of the game under the guise of player safety. And what you've been left with is a boring, stale sewer product that is magnitudes worse than what the NFL was even 15 years ago. And when you look at a team like the Cardinals, this team is supposed to not have a defense, but be really good on offense. That's sort of how they're built. They're an offensive-based team, and they just look like shit. And Cliff Kingsbury looks clueless. How do you piss away that much talent? The whole they actually took an L on the Christian Kirk thing, which nobody thought was even possible. And it's just disgusting to watch that team come out and have 7 points in the first half, to kick 2 field goals and an entire half. And you just know Kyler Murray's sitting in the locker room thinking, I can't wait to get home and play the new terrible COD game. The Pats have looked like a joke. And I know Mac Jones got banged up, but there was the brewing quarterback controversy starting to develop as Mac Jones got benched. Was it his ankle? Probably not. He just looked like shit. And they're going to Zappy, like, he's fucking bad. Bill Belichick really looks clueless. I mean, you've got to pick a guy, Bill. I know you rode Tom Brady to all your career success in New England, and you rode Bill Belichick to all your career success on the Giants, but the whole quarterback by committee doesn't work. It's like closer by committee. It is a bad build order that has been proven to not work. Time and time again, it's a shit strat. Pick your guy and stick with him. If Jones is too hurt to play, if his ankle's banged up, bench him until he's 100%. Don't throw him out to the wolves, ruin his confidence, and pull him just so you can lose a sewer game versus a shitter team. The Pats are a huge disappointment. You know, Bill Belichick might be able to outmanage a guy like Dan Campbell, whose defense is a total joke, and basically it's like they play with 9 people on defense, but the Patriots at 4-4 is disgusting. The Dolphins have been admittedly pretty fun to watch, but I don't really trust them that much. They are one of the teams, when I see them on the slate of games, I get excited about, though. And, you know, for the last 15 years, the Dolphins have never been that. They've been a 500 team or a joke team. The Jets are a squad that I look at, and it's like, wow, you got 5 wins. And then you watch Zach Wilson play, and it's like, he looks worse than he did in college. He makes some of the dumbest mistakes imaginable. Last week he was wheeling out on a bootleg and tried to throw the ball away and didn't even get it out of bounds, and it was intercepted. How do you fuck that up? You're 2 yards away from the sideline. You're well out of the tackle box. You can airmail that fucking thing into the seats, and they're not going to call an intentional grounding because you're almost out of bounds. But you're just going to like lazily lollipop it in bounds. The Jets are a joke. They lost Breece Hall. They're just going to go into free fall. Like, I would be surprised even at 5-3 if they finish with a winning record. The Ravens, can't trust them. Overrated, figured out to a large extent. The Bungles have been horseshit. Their line is garbage. Jamar Chase is out. He's going to be out for like 5 more weeks. Just isn't a good team. How they made it to the Super Bowl, I'll never know. I mean, you really got to give Burrow credit for that one. The Browns, they've been missing their quarterback, but they have 3 wins. Okay, I mean, they run the ball a lot. They're really not a threat. And they're disappointing. This was a team that, for the last few years, just throw last year out because Baker had a torn up shoulder, but for like the last 5 years, this was a competitive team that would be a couple games above 500 and threaten the playoffs or make the playoffs in what was at the time a strong division. Now, not so much. And yeah, okay, they don't have a quarterback, but when they get Watson, how good are they going to be? Probably back a little bit above 500 again, but he's not going to be the savior. And then the Steelers. This is one of the biggest laughingstock storylines of the whole year, where nonstop you heard Mike Tomlin dick road and cited as the example of how great affirmative action was and how we need more affirmative action in the NFL. Tom Coughlin was hard carried by Ben Roethlisberger his whole fucking career, and we've seen that this year. The Steelers have been a repugnant embarrassment, a team so bad where they're completely out of games by halftime. They show up unprepared, they show up uninspired, and they're one of these joke teams that can't even get their weapons the ball. How many times do you see Najee Harris given a little draw up the gut for 2 yards? Creativity's non-existent. And whenever you have play callers like McVay and Kingsbury and Reed in the league, and you go for 8 weeks without a single flashy or interesting play, it really shows how far you've been gapped as a coach, and really how hard you got carried by Ben Roethlisberger. Because let's just imagine 5 years later, like 5 years from now in 2027, how many, because the stat with Mike Tomlin was, oh, he's never had a losing season. He's so good. A couple 8-8 years thrown in there, by the way, but how many losing seasons will Tomlin have? This one's obviously going to be losing. Let's say he coaches for 5 more years. How many more losing? Like 4 or 5. He's going to be shit. He could even go to another team and still be shit. He's just not a good coach. Not terrible, you know. He's not like fucking Staley, but just laughably overrated. Tennessee Titans, this is a team that had their head in their ass at the beginning of the year. This is such a disgraceful sewer division. They're just going to win by default, which everyone knew. Some people pretended the Colts would be decent, but Matt Ryan's already been benched. Like, they gave up on him that quick. The season's over for them. The Jags are overrated. They're on a 5-loss streak. This was a flavor of the month gimmick team where their defense overperformed for a bit. They're really nothing now. The Texans have been a sewer team for 6 years. Their front office is an atrocity, and they should have cleaned house a half-decade ago. Chiefs are really good, well coached, legitimate, fun to watch, lots of weapons, consistently good. Probably like the second or third best team in the NFL behind the Bills. And considering what the Rams are, yeah, I give them the second place spot. Hopefully they play the Bills in the playoffs and it's a bloodbath, a shootout game. It's funny to me to look at the division and think about all the insipid offseason hype surrounding this division. This was a division where you had people saying things like, have you seen the free agent moves of the AFC West? Is it possible for all 3 wild card slots to go to one division? And you look at these teams and it's like, Vegas has been mediocre for Carr's entire career. Okay? Their defense is nothing special. Waller's always hurt. And okay, you got Devontae Adams, and you gave him all the money in the world. One flashy receiver does not a team make. Is Adams good? Yeah, he's really good. Is he on the level of all-time greats like he was painted as this offseason? He was painted as a top 5 receiver in the league, a potential Hall of Famer, this god-tier guy that was a can't-miss. No, he was just a good receiver who was carried by Aaron Rodgers. That's all he was. And let's talk about another media lie that I'd like to quickly debunk, is this Aaron Rodgers talking point where he loves to whinge about where he doesn't have any weapons. You know, if you believe that, you're really dim and you just started watching football, because throughout his entire career, Aaron Rodgers has had a plethora of weapons. You know, from Donald Driver, and you can fucking go on down the list. The quick, flashy white guy, not Wes Welker, but Jordy Nelson, he was really good. He had Walker for years. I mean, Rodgers had BJ Raji, you know, in between Big Macs. This guy's had plenty of weapons. He's gotten all the calls in the league. He gets more calls than Brady. Their defense has been decent for years. And Matt LaFleur is, oh, everyone thought he was God. You know, all you heard about was how great Matt LaFleur is. It's funny to me when you have these coaches who come into these situations, like Rodgers, you have Brady, and it's like these guys, Rodgers and Brady, are pretty much like coaches on their own. They command that much respect. They have that much of the control of the offense and how their peers think about them and respect them. They have a great offensive mind and the ability to ad-lib and audible. Like, you show up to be coach of like these guys like Brady, Breeze, Rodgers. You're basically like an assistant coach. Like, half of your job's already done for you. The hardest position that you have to worry the most about has already been taken care of. And he's going to make everyone else on the team better just by being on the field. I think it's funny whenever you see people cite like Matt LaFleur's coaching record, just fucking racking up those free wins in that weak division against the Bears. The Bears, who have been a sewer team for years. And you hear like Matt LaFleur, oh, he's top tier, you know, so good. And then it's like, what happened the moment he faced adversity? Like, they lost the one offensive player other than Rodgers, who was like considered really good. You lose that one guy, and what happens? They go to shit. They're in stunning free fall. They're 3-5. They get to play the Lions and Bears twice a year. They're 3-5. Rodgers looks washed. And this is like the first team he's ever played on where I don't have any weapons. Okay, this year, truly, he is sort of lacking weapons. Still has a very good backfield. Dillon's solid. And the guy who plays above Dillon is very solid as well, Jones. But, you know, okay, you're throwing to Lazard. Okay, now you know what it's like not to really have weapons. You've bitched about it your whole fucking career. You act like the 28th overall pick in the draft is going to land you some god-tier receiver, and it's just like, I'm so tired of hearing the fucking Packers and the Packers players and their fan base whine. Like, quit fucking whining. You've had everything given to you year after year after year, whether it's the Dez catch or any of the other lucky calls you get. You're 3-5. This is how good you really are, Matt LaFleur. You're not a top tier coach. And if you want to talk about top tier, look no further than the Philadelphia Eagles. And a lot of people have made fun of their schedule, like, oh, they're 8-0, but look who they beat. The Cowboys with Cooper Rush, the Lions, and it's like, dude, why don't you Google Philadelphia Eagles schedule? Let me fucking show you what I'm talking about. So these people will say, oh, Philly's overrated. They're not any good. Oh, they're the worst 8-0 team ever. They're going to falter. Look who they get to play in the second half of the season. They're not going to falter. They're going to be great. They might go undefeated. Look at this. The Commanders, sewer team. The Colts, joke team without a quarterback. The Packers. Oh, the big, at the beginning of the year, that matchup looked pretty good. Now, Packers are average at best. They're 3-5 in a bad division. Come on. The Titans, okay, I mean, the Titans, oh yeah. Another team that basically gets free wins from their division and has not looked good and has not a losing record, but they're at the top of that sewer division and started off really slow. Again, like they're just going to win by default. The Eagles play the Giants after that. The Giants 6-2, but laughably overrated. They're finally using Saquon a ton instead of like babying him and expecting Jones to carry. Hey, if he can stay healthy, I think the Giants can win like 9 games. I mean, shit, they're already at 6, right? But don't be worried about this team in the playoffs. The Bears, a complete disgrace team with one of the worst quarterbacks in recent NFL history and a team that just had the Cowboys hang 50 fucking points on them. They're a joke. That's one of those teams you look at and you're like, wow, 3 wins for the Bears. How the fuck did they get that? You would think they would have 3 wins by the end of the year. The Cowgirls, overrated. The Phillies should just destroy the Cowboys. There's like a really good chance they go into this game undefeated and this is their last chance to really lose because then they get to play the Saints, who, it's funny, if you talk to some people, it's like they think the Saints are still being coached by Sean Payton. And they think that they're just going to be way better than they should, even with their quarterback situation and lack of talent in the other positions, and the Eagles, who are a joke. So yeah, oh, look who Philly beat. Like, oh, primetime Kirk Cousins, the Commanders, Herpy Derp, Cliff Kingsbury fraud, the Jags, and it's like, okay, look at the rest of their schedule. It's just as bad. So the Cowboys, really overrated. Cooper Rush, about on the same level as Dak. This is a team that just gets carried by their defense in a way that's not really sustainable or easy to replicate. They have like a lot, if you look at their games and watch the VODs, they have a lot of fluky, weird games where like they get like a fumble recovery for 6 or like a pick 6 and they'll win like 22-10, and it's like, well, what'd the offense do? Oh, fucking nothing. Like, the defense isn't going to hard carry you every game. Like, you play these teams like the Rams, the Chiefs, the Bills, they're not going to just stooge away turnovers like these sucking sewer teams you get to play in division. The Giants I've spoken about, overrated. The Commanders, oh great, they're 4-4. It's funny because the NFC East was bagged on for years and years and years for being like the shittiest division. I mean, it was a joke. And now the worst team in that division is 4-4. 2 teams are 6-2 and 1 team's undefeated. And everyone who is like an idiot Cowboy fan views this as like a victory lap, you know? But the truth is like Washington is terrible, just straight up terrible, okay? The Giants are overrated, but they got a new coach that knows what he's doing and understands his win conditions and is getting the most out of his players. Good for the Giants. Like, the Giants have legitimately improved, but you have their fans saying shit like, oh, it's going to be a magical season. No, it's not. Okay, like, it's a magical season because you might not finish with fucking double-digit losses for the first time in years. If you want to consider that magic, go ahead, David Blaine. The Vikings, yeah, they're 6-1. Like, they're overrated in terms of their record. They're not that good. This is a team that is going to fold in the playoffs to the first or second person they play. Defense not that good. Kirk Cousins, I mean, how many times has this talking point been beat to death? He's like a good quarterback who folds in the big spots, and when he plays the premier teams, he looks like a retard. I don't trust the Vikings. I do like Cook though. I like when they run a lot. Talked about the Packers joke team, talk about the Bears joke team. Then we get to the Lions. This is a team that mostly because of hard knocks, like people wanted to succeed and do well. People like Dan Campbell. And, I was rooting for him. I'll admit it. I wasn't predicting him to win 8 games, but I was rooting for him. They've been shit. And you expect like a hard-nosed defensive cat like Dan Campbell to be able to have at least like the 20th ranked defense. But what instead you have is a repugnant disgrace where their defense is literally non-existent. The defense is a joke. The defense is so bad in Detroit. Like they're out of all the defenses in the NFL, they give up the most big plays, and they have like these plays at the end of the game where there can be still sort of competitive, but they're losing. These defense just gives up like the biggest, dumbest chunk plays you've ever seen. Like not only do they have the worst defense, but they have like a really lax AFK defense that shows no grit at all. That's not something I expected from Dan Campbell. Expected better. 2 or 3 wins, Kappa. And here we see the new sewer division of the NFC, the South, where you have the Falcons, who ditched a bunch of talent and took on some bad contracts and were pretty much trying to tank this year. They're not any good, but they've won some close games. They're 4-4. They stole a game versus Carolina last week. To give you or 2 weeks ago, I think. Yeah, because last week the Panthers beat the Bucks. But to give you an idea of how brutal that division is, 2 weeks ago when the Falcons and Panthers were playing that game. Remember, this is like the total joke Panthers that just canned their coach and set themselves back 5 years, trading away the best running back in the league for peanuts. If they had won that game, which they had won multiple times and went to overtime, and they choked 2 big kicks, they would have been first in the division. The Saints are not any good. Just print that in all caps. The Saints are not any good. Just remember that. The Saints are not any good. Stop treating this team like Sean Payton is still coaching. They're not any good. The Bucks are one of the most surprising teams in the league. They've been a fucking joke. A straight up joke. And you never really see that from Brady teams. The most adversity you see from Brady teams is 1 or 2 shitty losses and then they recover. But this is awful. It's awful. Speaking of awful, the Seattle Seahawks have come into a division that had 3 supposedly really good teams in it, and they're winning the division. Geno Smith has been solid. The defense has been better than people thought. And Lockett and Metcalf have still been pretty good. But what this comes down to is the Rams and the Cardinals being disappointing. And I know I spoke about them at the beginning of the episode, but this is an atrocity. Plain and simple. You have all the talent in the world on these rosters. Rosters that, for the most part, have sold picks and bought existing talented players and gone all in with veterans, and they really want to win now, and this is their window. If you look at Murray's contract, he's either going to win in the next 5 years or he's never going to win. There's no scenario in which Kyler Murray plays for the next 5 years, is unsuccessful, and then comes back with another Oregon coach and is good. He has to be good on the Cardinals. They're all in on him. It's very, very simple. And then the Niners, they did a Trey Lance gimmick that blew up in their face, thank God. And now they have McCaffrey and Jokey G. I think they're a legitimate threat to win a couple rounds in the NFC playoffs. The Seahawks will fade. They will not make the playoffs. And I think eventually the Rams will get their shit together and have a winning record. But I thought that after week 3, and you still watch them, and they're still grossly uncompetitive and uninspired and just not showing up in a lot of these games. And this is what really worries me about the Rams and the Cardinals, is that not only they're not just losing in 45-40 games, they're showing up without an offense, week after week after week, McVay and Kingsbury and their giant fancy fucking play calling book of all these gimmick plays, and it's 6 points at half, 7 points at half. What the fuck are you guys doing? You're not playing the 86 Bears defense here. Wake you up. Alright, so we can talk a bit about fantasy here. I have an absolutely ridiculous week where I'm getting butchered by buys, and I had to cobble together a lineup that is probably going to go even with Lily, whose running backs are pretty weak. But hey, join the club. I edge myself by a point. Cam versus Spencer, hilariously, this is a matchup that could tie the division lead with Spencer. But the Chargers are going to play, so Cam was going to rely on them heavily as usual. You know, Cam never checks or fucks with his roster, so whenever you're doing TWIF and it's like week 7 and 8, like you're saying the same shit about Cam's roster. It's like, oh, if these two top heavy guys pop off, he'll probably win. But looking at Spencer here, he's got Chase hurt and Chubb on bye. Brutal week for him. Hopefully Williams can steal a touchdown for him, and Tyreek can have a pop-off week. I'm actually going to edge Spencer here by 5 points. We go Seagouch and Ryan. Tua will pop off against the Bears. And I think Burrow and Mixon do well against Carolina. This is a pretty uninteresting matchup, frankly. He's got to put a defense in. I'm going to tell him after I post this, or after I quit recording. I mean, look, this is a big reason why Seagouch's team has been bad. Like Boyd. Okay, Chase is out, you know, and he's been honestly better than I thought he was, but not that good. And then Pittman, just a joke player with no quarterback. He's been really weak at receiver all year. I edge Ryan here. And then JP and Weston. Weston really needs to win, and I really need him to win, so he's going to lose. Allen is going to pop off against the Jets. The rest of his team won't do shit, but it won't matter. Austin and Jackson, 2 4-4 teams that desperately need to win. Jackson playing at a big disadvantage here. D-Hop's obviously back, which is, I mean, he's been back for 2 weeks now, but it's just a big buff to AB's team. AJ Brown caught him a tutty and put up a dozen. Still has Kelsey, who will have a big week. Lots of buys here for AB, but that really ain't no thing, you know, like McCaffrey's on bye too. The Niners being on bye like has a big effect on fantasy. But I don't think Mozart and Jackson will be able to clutch it for Jackson at manage AB. And we have Rampy and the commish, both 3 and 5. Dalvin Cook will have a big week against Washington. They'll play from ahead. Lamar Jackson should do great against NOLA. I give the edge to the commish. So that was the TWIF video. Make sure you like it and leave a comment.